This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barties and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. So, this week's pod, there's no news. We are just going to launch straight into what we're watching because it is a stacked segment, starting with the Winchesters. We've got yet another plot in which Lotta and Carlos are separate, and Mary and John are doing their own thing. To remind y'all, John is being accused of murder, a murder he did not commit, and Mary is going a little feral over the idea that he's going to be sent to prison, which is understandable, but I don't know about a prison break. But what did you guys think of the episode?
When you list everything like that, it really sounds like it could have been great. On paper, it sounds great. But I feel a little divided over this episode, and I'm sensing that'll be the tone going forward, because of the way the split between the two storylines, and it felt like the Carlos and Lotta one had more stakes, even though, well, I mean, life or death situations do have more stakes, but it was the subplot of the episode, and I kind of feel like John and Mary's storyline should have had a little bit more oomph. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're correct.
There wasn't a ton of connection between the two. It was, I mean, like you said, it was divided. And while watching, I couldn't decide which one I was more invested in, or if I was invested in both or neither. I couldn't decide, because there were parts of each one that I really enjoyed watching, and then there were others that I was like, it feels too disconnected to really grab on too much. But I will say I think I liked Lotta getting vulnerable and really going there. There was so much more into it, though. It was so complex that, again, I don't know how I feel.
I feel like we started on the track of being basically towards the same plot, because the whole thing with Carlos and Lotta started from trying to find a way to prove John's innocence. But then by the time they get into that kitchen area and they find the bracelet, we've spiraled completely away from what's happening with John, Mary, Betty, and what is Bianca's name on the show?
Millie.
Millie, thank you. And Millie. So it just felt like we two different temperatures. Like, it was very exploratory and character development over in Carlos and Lotta's plot, and then with John and Mary, it felt like we were waiting for the action to start, and it did towards the end. Not to say that John's scenes in the interrogation room weren't great, because we did learn some things about him, like he's a POW. We also learned some things about Dean, which, if everyone was like, is he from an alternate Earth, they confirmed yes, he is. So
4 weeks later.
Yes.
We got there in the end.
I think as much as I do love the show, they kind of let things breathe a little too long for a 13 episode season. I feel like, in retrospect, I would have liked seeing that Lotta storyline happen earlier, and then seeing how that brings her and Carlos closer together, or maybe it takes some time. But this is episode 11 of 13, and we're just getting to know Lotta on a deeper level. I don't know. I feel like I would have enjoyed seeing that. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna contradict myself. Maybe we needed time to get to know her for that admission to hold weight. But I don't know. I would have liked it to happen earlier, because we had so much of that for John and Mary early on, that we really didn't get any of this from Lotta until now. There's something else I was gonna say. I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because I kind of feel like, of all the show, we're all shorter seasons here. We all love our short seasons, especially on this network, because they're more concise or whatever. But we knew Windy would benefit from a 13 episode season, because it looks like prestige TV. The Flash at Riverdale need tightened up, so they would benefit from shorter seasons. I think the Winchesters is one that actually could have benefited from a longer season, because it has that old Supernatural Buffy quality of those 22 episode seasons that really would have. It worked with the Monster of the Week, but it's trying to do Monster of the Week, storyline of the week, plot of the week, villain of the week, as well as tell an overall arc in just 13 episodes, and it's not got the balance right. And the reason I think this episode didn't work is kind of a different reason I didn't think the previous ones did, is that both of them have real stakes. both of them are really important stories, and I feel like both of them should have been the center plots of their own episodes, whereas we were trying to juggle the two between them. I did appreciate what they did at the start and the end to try to tie these storylines together, but they were so different, but yet so strong and overpowering that I feel like the Lata and Carlos one kind of upended the John one, as it should have. Like I said, life or death stakes. But pairing the two of them together didn't work because they were so disconnected and so powerful in their own sense. I think they worked against each other instead of working with each other, which is what a
Canceled
subplot is
each
supposed
other
to do.
out.
Exactly.
I agree, because the Lotta plot, I believe, was seeded pre-winter hiatus, because she
A
gets
while
that phone
ago, because
call.
that was like episode 2 when she like
Mhm.
calls, right? I
Is
don't
it
know.
two?
They were in like that music festival Wilderness, I thought, and we found out something about her parents. It was really early on, I
Yeah.
feel like.
Okay, because I thought it was a little later, not too much past that episode, because she needed something, and then she's talking to someone on
I
the
mean,
phone.
we know I don't have the greatest memory when it comes to TV, so you're probably right.
But in either case, though, she like that was I forgot about it until they brought it back in to this plot with her and Carlos. And this storyline for her also felt like what we had done for the mid-season premiere with Carlos, where we had expanded on something tragic that helped further their characters. And it's not that I didn't appreciate it; it just felt like it needed to be in its own episode. Because once again, the John and Mary stuff got undercut by it when really it deserved to, both plots deserved to breathe.
Mhm.
I will say though that I felt like I really loved how we were stuck in that very cold chamber, and that was a means of bringing tension into the plot. Besides just saying, "Oh, we're gonna die," like no, you literally could freeze to death in this chamber. Like Lata, we need to get the story on out of you so we can get out of this uh, shadow realm or wherever they have been trapped by the bracelet. And I like that we got to meet the cousin, Meg's cousin, not Meg's
Mm.
cousin, Mary's cousin. I'm gonna get character names. I truly am. I'm gonna stop saying actor names.
I like that too, because that was one of their long running arcs, and we finally got some kind of like development on it. And it was interesting that they used Lata to kind of bring that forward rather than Mirai, because you know how important that her cousin was to her. Um, I did really like that, and that's the thing. I really like the Carlos and Lata story, but if you'll notice, like most of the commercial break segments took place with those cliffhangers, and that kind of highlighted how important that storyline was. And again, as a result, it felt like we had just pressed pause on the John storyline, the Akrita storyline, the Mary storyline, because it was all about her breaking him out. So we spent an awful long time in the same place. And that didn't really go with how intense the Carlos and Lada one is. I feel like I will move on from this point, but I'm kind of still hung up on the fact that both of these episodes deserve the chance to, both of these storylines deserve the chance to breathe, and this episode never really allowed either one of them to do it because they were just struggling and juggling screen time between the two of them.
Speaking of struggling, can you guys explain to me what's going on with Dean? I feel like it is so subtle. Just the picture keeps being shown on screen, and I'm like, "Oh, but what?" I can't
Mm.
connect the dots. I feel like they're stringing me along. I'm like, I want to know what's happening.
Maybe it's too early to say. I shouldn't be saying that 13 or what 11 episodes in of a 13 episode season, but I feel like they're setting up that he may be from another Earth, from another parallel dimension, because we learned that Supernatural introduced a multiversal concept at some point that was way beyond my years when I stopped watching it, and we think that is he from that universe? Is he from the future? Is he like dead and he's gone back in time? We don't know, but the fact is the Winchesters have started telling some alternate stories and telling things slightly differently from how that storyline was supposed to have played out in Supernatural. I think there are certain like differences with the way holy water worked on vampires, things that didn't apply in Supernatural. So this has played with the lore a little bit, and that's led fans to believe that it might be set in an alternate world. So is the Dean that's showing up from the main Supernatural world, has he now crossed over into this world to make sure that his parents meet in the same way? It's very confusing, and I feel like we'll maybe just start getting crumbs of it when the finale rolls around, and I'm not sure that's enough.
So just to clarify, there are no definitive answers. I didn't miss anything.
No, we're not
No.
supposed to know yet. It's an ongoing story.
So they
Yeah.
don't know either who he is.
No, he's like all I know is because of that Akrita was that he's from an alternate Earth. That's the only thing that slipped through. But And all we know is that he keeps getting photographed around town, so he's not being careful. Don't know what he's doing, but like we're just on street corners, we're breaking into fences. It's just he's doing
I feel
whatever
like that
he needs
tracks
to do.
with what I know about Dean.
And it feels like if they're all from the same break-in or whatever it was, just all shot from different angles, that we were like, when Tom Welling discovered it was such a big deal, but now we kind of find out like everybody's got photographs of him.
Yeah, I thought it was just that one picture, and now we have like a photo album.
Yeah, like did
Yeah.
he not realize there was like 10 people photographing him from the distance because they all got him from different angles?
No.
But like I don't know where they're going with this. It was a really, really, really interesting introduction and a huge cliffhanger when it came. But now they're kind of like teasing us with it under the surface. So much
I'm
so
losing
that
interest.
Yeah.
so much so that we got that really on the nose
I
reminder at
hate
the
to
end
say
just to
it.
remind us.
It's just it's a no. I just really want him to like not be in a photograph and just appear and give us
Yeah,
some like
connect the
exposition.
dots.
We need to get there. I mean, the penultimate episode is coming, so perhaps it'll be in the penultimate episode. But when we do that review, if it's not, it's just going to end up being a drag. Because why wait into the finale? But to moving away from Dean for a moment, how did we feel about Betty and how much Betty had to do in this episode?
Not a fan.
Mm.
But I
She
think
pla-
we're not supposed to like her. So
She played
I
her
guess
part.
it was successful.
Yeah. She kind of played her part, and that was that. It was a bit of an obvious arc. You saw it coming, but she wasn't the most. It was interesting that she wasn't the most trustworthy about it. Millie was slightly wrong at the start, and they had to convince her. And she saw those swirly green lines, and then she knew evil was everywhere. By the numbers, but we got there in the end.
We did. I was surprised when she had said that she and Kevin had, is his name Kevin? I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get
Oh, the dead one?
Kyle.
Kyle.
Today's not my day for names. It's just gonna be a struggle through the review. But Kyle, she'd been working with Kyle for weeks. And I was like, oh, it had been weeks. It felt like y'all had one conversation at the table. It had maybe been about 2 days. And I feel like we needed to have seeded that better, seen them working around town more. I mean, I'm glad that she was like Team John, but the way that she was like, we'll just work it through the system. And I was like, what part of this looks like he's going to be able to beat a murder rap girl that he was at the scene? He had the blood on him.
I was cheering for Mary when they were scrapping in that alley. Where I don't know where they were, but when Betty pulled that gun on her, Mary was like, not on my watch, girl.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I expected better from Betty. I know we don't really know her that much, but you see when she first turned up and she was like, he'll have his day in court. I was like, really? Are we really going to start talking about your longtime love like he's just anyone else without even asking him what happened? Why are you evading the law? Did you do it? Again, by the numbers, we got there in the end, but like, I would have liked a little bit more humanity from her at the start rather than just being the good cop that didn't ask any questions.
Yeah, I guess also it's pretty obvious we needed somebody on the inside. And rather than just like letting that happen naturally, we're just like, we're going to make her an antagonist. And then we're going to make her a friend to the rest of the group. And it's like, yeah, okay. But we're on this rollicking ride. I really don't think there's anything else to say about the Winchesters because the plot is not plotting the way we wanted it to. And so we're going to go into the penultimate episode still on the fence about the Akrita and on the fence about the direction the show is going on. It's just, season 1 it was what it was. Maybe it'll end really nicely.
Yeah. We're still rooting for it.
Though. Love them.
Yes, they're amazing. I would want another season just to see them grow.
Yeah.
And be able to see this show flourish.
The plot may not be plotting, but the Drake is draking. So.
Yes, exactly. And that's why heading into The Flash, it's just like yet another CW show that's struggling. And
I'm ready. Spill all of the tea.
So for me, it was a better episode than episode 2. I think it had more concrete points that you could like sink your teeth into. But I also was like, Hartley and the Rogues could have been an amazing episode because it's a heist episode. And yet it wasn't. And Hartley's acting really weird. I remember, Michael, I saw your tweet. You were like, why are you doing this to Hartley?
Oh man, I started this episode so happy. I really enjoyed this episode, and on paper it should have worked because I believe the War of Rogues is kind of like a tribute to the one of the Flash storylines of the War of the Rogues, and it's basically we're two teams, the new Rogues versus the old Rogues. It should have worked, but I mean, like, I'm sorry, they could have gotten so many better Rogue lineup than some of the ones we saw, like Goldface, the Hotness, Chilblain. Pied Piper was fine, but the other one's not so much. And then, like you said, Hartley started acting really bizarrely, and it would have been fine if we hadn't seen him for like 6 years. He was literally in the episode beforehand, learned his lesson, reminded Team Flash why he was an ally. And then this episode, he started like, I want this for my crew, who we don't care about, know nothing about. Like, if he maybe mentioned his boyfriend, who we did like marginally care about, I would have understood that. But like, you know what I mean? But like, why are we supposed to care about a bad guy's crew? You know what I mean? That's not character driven. And he went on about his crew before, and I mean, I clearly Hartley cares about his crew. Fair play, the villain has heart, great. But I mean, he cared about Team Flash too, and he turned on them. I want more from Hartley. Hartley has more to give, and I don't want the current writing of the Flash to ruin a great character from season 1. So much about this episode I did like I said, the concept, the team working together, and it was nice to see our old pal, the Hotness, and there wasn't one single and I have to say, he was in it for the mission, not the money.
Oh God.
But he's been one of the cornier villains, and I feel like all the work they did in season 8 to make him a more multi-dimensional character was undone in this episode, because he very much felt like one-dimensional again. Yes, he had heart. Yes, he was like, Barry, you got me out of a tight situation, so I'm going to help you and all that jazz. But the fact that he started falling in love with the fiddler over their joint love of 9 Inch Nails in the middle of a huge showdown. Yeah.
What? Okay, wait. Pause. Why does it seem like this episode was all about guest stars?
Because it was.
It kind of was, yeah.
Yeah.
Are they any of them coming back, or is this their like last appearance?
It's kind of set them up to come back, because Barry's like, Team Flash can't do it alone. We have an army of rogues out there that the Red Death is using. I need my own army of rogues. And they're all like, if you need us, call us. So I feel like he will call them at some point. I hope he does. That would be so disappointing if that's the last time we see them.
I know. It was so weird how they put Hartley into this, because I feel like prior to seeing him last episode, the last time we saw him, they had a whole Sleeping Beauty thing where Roderick, I forget the situation was, but Roderick, his boyfriend, was going to die, and he was like asleep. And so Hartley needed to save him. And they did have a crew, because they had a crew of thieves. But when they brought him back for this final season, it didn't seem like they were still committing crimes. They were running a club. So if he was like, for my crew, I was like, but y'all are just running a bar. What did they need it for? He's like, my gauntlets are going to be super powered. I got tired of hearing about those gauntlets. I understand it's how he does his thing, but he said it like 4 different times. And I was like, I get it. You need the piece of technology to be able to power up your gloves. But I just feel like they could have made the rogues his people, so that way it made sense for his crew to not really coincide with what Barry wanted to do. I also felt like I didn't like how all of them turned on him. I felt like Jacko, the Hotness, should have stayed on Barry's side, considering the fact that, Reed, I don't know if you remember, but Jacko melted somebody's bones. He killed somebody. The Hotness, yeah. He killed somebody in the episode he was in last season, and he's not in jail. He was working at Jitters, and he also beat a different rap. And I was like, why, out of all people, you should have stayed on Barry's side, because he's the one who kept you out of jail for murder. But he was like, you don't believe that, you don't trust us. It's like, you killed someone, Hotness. The trust only goes so far. But the same thing happened with Chilblain too. Chilblain killed somebody, and Team Flash didn't care. So I just don't know what Team Flash's morality is these days.
And Don't get me wrong. Just quickly to recap the plot. Read. Then they knew the new rogues were going to steal something. So Barry needed his own team of rogues to steal something back because they had meta dampeners at the location. So the Flash couldn't speed in and speed out because his powers would be dampened. So we needed a team of a team of bad guys to help him break in. That's where Hartley and the rogues came in. The problem was Barry didn't trust them because they were villains. And I mean, apart from Hartley, who again was acting out of character, none of these people gave him any reason to trust them. Why did Barry feel the need that he had to act like he trusted them? Because he was hard on himself that he didn't trust them. Like, they're literally bad guys who do bad things. Why would you trust them? So when they went off and did their own thing and said, we're going to save the day and steal this machine for you instead, but you can't be part of it, Barry felt guilty because he didn't trust them. And again, bad guys, why would you? So in order to earn their trust, Barry was like, I'm the Flash. And like, why would you tell these villains you're the Flash? You know what I mean? I mean, of course, Hartley knew and Chilblain knew, that was fine. But Goldface, who when we last saw held all of Central City's PD hostage, threatened to blow people's heads off, and literally almost blew the place up. Why would you tell Goldface you're the Flash? You know what I mean? Because like after this is over, he could use that against you. So I didn't. And then of course the hotness, the one-dimensional hotness. Knew Barry was the Flash because Barry and the Flash have the same coffee order at Jitters.
Like, it must be intricate. It must be an intricate order because that through line just was not there.
It's just like an Americano with 2 sugars.
Yeah, so he's like, immediately that has to be the Flash. Has to be. And it's like, okay, hotness. But I think I wish I could have been able to lean into the ridiculousness of this plot because I mean it truly was. So I mean the piece of technology they need is to create a cosmic treadmill.
Treadmill.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a cosmic treadmill because that's going to send them back in time. And I was trying to just accept that plot for what it was. I know it's a part of the Red Death storyline, so I'm sure they're going to work in some type of backstory there. But this could have been a really fun heist episode with ridiculousness and letting Grant lean into his comedic timing because he's great at that. And instead, it really was Barry's like, I'm supposed to be leading them. I was like, first of all, they don't know that only 2 of them know that you're the Flash. And I don't know why they thought like they truly entertained taking you on this heist. But they did. And then second of all, why were we surprised at the betrayals? Chilblain betrayed him because apparently he's been working with the benefactor, the person who wants the piece of technology Reed. And I was like, we saw that one coming a mile away. Chilblain's still mad about the machine being broken and the fact that he can't get Frost back. And weirdly, he told Barry basically that he knows nothing about loss. And I was like, Barry's lost nearly every person that he loves. So yeah, he's not the person to say that to. And he wasn't allowed to push back on it. It's just something that Mark got to say. And I was like, no, he has lost people that he loved. I just don't. But whatever. This has been a struggle season, and we're only in episode 3.
What was Iris up to?
Working with Barry and doing absolutely nothing else but that.
It's just, cool. Yeah, I love I love the fact that we have her back at the forefront of the show so that they're not separate, but I think we're risking going back into season 4 territory there where they didn't want to bother with the reporter arc, so just lumped her in with the Team Flash stuff. And like, I love Iris and she was a great leader of Team Flash, but we did not need her to be the leader of Team Flash for a whole season when she could have been writing stories. So I don't want us to go back there. And then they had this interesting thing where she's afraid that she'll not get to break one more big story before she becomes a mom. And I do appreciate the idea of having the natural conflict in there that you're going to have less time when you become a parent. That was fine, but it feels like it came out of nowhere and that Iris suddenly has this fear that the life as she knows it will be over when she becomes a parent. And again, that's a great storyline on paper, but why are we only hearing about it now?
But doesn't she know what her future looks like?
She does, and that's the thing that was irritating about that scene. It's Grant and Candace hit it out of the park. It was
incredible scene, yeah.
It was a very like emotionally driven scene, and it would have worked if Iris didn't already know what happens in 2049 and know the tidbits of what happened in the roadmap that Barry had made. She knows she's getting 2 Pulitzers. She's clearly not getting 2 Pulitzers in 9 months. Yeah. So the idea that she was like, oh, I become a mom, that's going to become my identity, and I'm not going to have time for my legacy and what I want to give back, the things that I want to work on. Like, I understood that perspective. I didn't understand that perspective in the context of what Iris is supposed to already know, especially when after she vents and Barry reassures her she has time. He then says, remember, you have 2 Pulitzers. I was like, well, why would he remember that and she not remember that? Like, that's just odd.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to challenge the timeline with the whole like we can do whatever we want because then Iris or was it Barry or Iris like maybe 3 Pulitzers because they know the outline is there but they want to change it, which is completely contradictory of everything we've learned about the Flash up until this point. You should not mess with the timeline. You should not know what's coming in the future. But I mean, like we'll roll with it and see where it goes. Yeah, I appreciated the scene because of the performances, but some of the storyline wasn't storylining leading up to that point for me. Um, yeah, there's glimpses of greatness in there, just like the episode, but it all didn't come together for me. The ending, however, is
I
probably
heard
the
through the
best part of it.
grapevine that Javicia showed up.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How
Um,
did you guys like that?
Amazingness. It's so good to see her. I mean, we knew that she was coming. I didn't think we were going to get the reveal of her alt self. But once we saw the picture of her on the screen, I figured we were gonna get what she looks like as Red Death. And we did, and I cannot wait for this arc to truly kick off and we get to see her act and say more things than I am vengeance.
yeah.
Is the
Oh,
Red Death like her? I saw a recap about like her showing up and I tried to read it and understand, but naturally I did not. Is she like is the Red Death Batwoman? Is that a
um,
dumb question?
no, no, it's not. I feel like it's supposed to be. We don't know. They're probably going to dance over this because they don't want to tell the story. But we think it's supposed to be a doppelganger from an alternate universe, or her
Of
from the
course.
future, or her from the future. Even though Crisis established that doppelgangers can't exist on the same universe anymore. So,
There's just so many rules and I just like could never keep them straight.
um, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, anyway, in the comics, Red Death is Batman gone insane who steals the Flash's speed to kill all his bad guys. In this storyline, it seems to be that Batwoman's gone insane, stole the Flash's speed, and now wants to take out the Flash for a reason we don't quite know. But anyway, the ending of the episode revealed that the benefactor is using Wayne technology, and that's where Iris's arc comes in. She's investigating what does Wayne and Gotham City have to do with all of this. And then in the end, they reached out to Luke Fox from Team Batwoman, and he said they have their own issues at the moment because Ryan Wilder went out on patrol 3 weeks ago and never came back. And I'm like, would Team Flash not have heard that Batwoman was missing by now? Like, it's been 3 weeks, y'all. Like, of course they would have been contacted at this stage. So, and then that cut to the next scene, and we find out that the Red Death is in fact an alternate version of Batwoman. So we don't know what's going on yet, but by the sounds of things, the Red Death has kidnapped the real Batwoman to draw the Flash out. We think because the Red Death has a vendetta against the Flash that we don't quite know yet. So lots of interesting storylines, which I think is probably makes me very excited for next week's episode because we have a Red Death two-parter coming up, The Mask of the Red Death Part 1 and Part 2. So hopefully now if we can stick on this storyline and tell a coherent story, things are good because I'm excited to see Javicia again. There was a lot of great in that episode and a lot of it had to do with that storyline. So I'm still excited for next week, even though I still feel like, again, this episode was like a season 1 episode on paper, but the execution felt far too season 8 to me and it kind of let it down.
It did. So perhaps we'll put Keon on the shelf as well as Chalegra, since that seems to have been wrapped up.
Leave it on the shelf.
There's so much going on.
There is, but like not all of it is interesting. And I think we're also
Sounds interesting.
See, that's the point. On the paper, it sounds so good, but in execution, no, except for the Red Death plot. And I guess the Baby Moon plot, which apparently is wrapping up soon since Barry and his lists we're nearly through it, and they were cooking in Paris, which is so nice. I did like seeing that part of West Allen's relationship. But the Flash is flashing, so we'll see how the final run goes.
We'll keep the faith.
Okay,
We'll try.
my bar might be going towards the ground, Michael. I don't know where your bar is, but my expectations, they're being managed, and they're being managed towards lower them.
I'm naively hopeful, and I will be right here to the end. It probably won't work out well for me. It never has, but we'll see.
Okay, well, moving on to Wendy. um, I just love getting onto the pod and being able to express how amazing Wendy is. So once again, it was another great episode. This wasn't a heist. It was more of a duping of railroad investors. And it was just nice seeing the team come up with a plan and execute it to the best of their ability while still being off the wall and a little bonkers as they tried to make this work.
It was a lot of fun, I have to say. I liked the fact that it was kind of like a kipper. You know what I mean? Like we get the team back together for something really like, it sounds quirky and like fun, but at the same time, there was a lot of like importance behind it because they were helping Callian. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they needed that kind of like oomph to get them back together because there's been a lot that's happened since they kind of went their own separate ways. And I'm sure we'll get into it all, but like, the whole Abby and Kate awkwardness over, of course, Kate finding Abby with Tom the morning after. They needed something like this to like get the band back together, and I thought it was like adorable that like Hoyt was the one that was like the team's back together because he was kind of like that gruff, reluctant one at the start. Yeah, a lot to get into, but I will say I like the fact that something important got the team back together because I forgot how much I miss seeing them all in the same place at the same time. It's been a while.
If I'm being honest, and I know I said this to you guys before, this was probably for me one of the weaker episodes, but still, to be fair, even like a mediocre episode of Walker Independence is better than most TV shows. So I was fine with it. It just took me a minute to get like into it because there were so many like dynamics that were frayed, and it had a lot of work to do to like between like Kate and Abby and Kate and Kai. There was just so much like unsettled friction that they thrust me into this duping that I was kind of like, oh, so we're doing this again already. But I mean, I was on board. I'm always on board with whatever Wendy does, but it took me a minute to get into this episode. I have to admit, only honest on this podcast, I have to say. Only honesty.
Yeah, well, we were setting up the pieces of how this was going to go. And I do think you're right about like the conflicts that are happening, at least in terms of what's going on with Kate's conflicts with Abby and her conflict with Kai, like the two people that she's closest to on the show. She's just not really meshing with them. Towards the end of the episode, like some of that is relieved, but when she's like still like in thought about, dang, Abby was with Tom, like it's messing up her ability to work properly. And as the Kate, I need you to let the Tom thing I get, but the Kai thing, we're not past it yet. Can we move past it just a little?
It's kind of like glass houses to me, which I think is probably an important thing to know about her characters, that she will hold people accountable and maybe not recognize her own faults. So I guess that's an important character thing to take note of. But as a viewer, it's kind of like, Kate, we need to move forward a little bit, girl. Like, let's go.
Yeah, and I to be fair, I totally see your point, Reed, that it felt like this episode took a little while to get going because they had an awful lot of like build up and follow up in the first couple of minutes based on obviously the cliffhanger from the week before. But
we didn't even get the not to interrupt you, sorry. We didn't even get the resolution of Kate catching Abby immediately. It took a few scenes to get to that.
Exactly.
I was like waiting. I was like, wait, that was enormous. And Kate's just like conducting a dance class. I was like, I need something.
Yeah, I like the fact that she couldn't concentrate on it. She was like Kate, who's always got the most composure of everyone, was kind of a little bit falling apart. She wasn't paying attention to what was going on. Kai came in, things got worse. So I did appreciate that. But no, I do agree. I feel like the caper or the like a plot of the week kind of took center stage this week, and that meant that we didn't really get to the really juicy stuff until the back half of the episode, which felt like they were dragging their feet, even though they were telling a good story. It still felt like, okay, when's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? When are we going to get here? And they did in the end. But I know what you mean.
Did they?
Yeah. It was just an interesting like juxtaposition of what we were kind of expecting, because Wendy's always intense, and this was a bit more fun and playful than we were kind of expecting.
Yeah, I feel like you're right. They were dragging their feet. And it also felt like they wanted us to keep popping in with Tom and Shane in this torture scene, my goodness, as we were doing like fun, light, and trying to help Callian while also dealing with a very racist investor. In learning certain different character beats, like they leaned more into Kate being fluid in her gender. She got to pretend to be Parker and someone who of not notoriety, because that if she had been famous, that person would have known that that's not the Parker you're supposed to be sitting with, but someone who has influence and power, and she does have that in independence, but it's not the same thing as being able to control the direction of where a railroad goes. But even while I was enjoying all of that, I was like, when is who's gonna find Tom and Shane? Because this is some mess in this barn.
Oh, that cliffhanger. Oh, I had no idea where it was gonna go until they pulled back and we just heard the gunshots. Oh my gosh.
Gus better be fine. I mean, I'm sure he's fine, but Gus better be fine.
Yeah.
I feel like he is. I feel like that he was shooting, right?
Well, it's 2 gunshots, so he could have shot, and then Shane or Tom shot. So I think there was 2 flashes, wasn't there?
Might have been 3.
Might have been 3.
I don't know.
That's the intensity we're talking about from Wendy.
Yeah. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, okay. Forget everything else I thought about this episode. This was great.
Well, there's that intensity, and then there's, as that's happening, Abby, who had decided she was going to trust Tom, finds Liam's journal. And that trust immediately has to go out the window. And I was like, well, Abby girl, that's why one night during the storm shouldn't have been your, Tom's probably a good guy.
And I did say when she started doubting the fact whether Tom did it, that it could have been Shane, that it felt like I was a bit disappointed, because I was worried this was just going to be like a red herring. But since then, they've done an awful lot of work to convince us otherwise. Is this the moment where we go back to, yeah, it was Tom all along, or is Shane really the worst of the two? They've done a good job in a very short amount of time, because I was worried it was going to be a one and done thing, very predictable. There wasn't anything like that. Now, we're really, what's going on in Independence at this moment? We don't really know, and I think that was very effective.
No one knows.
Well, maybe Kai knows a little, though, because he went off on Kate when he found out what they had done to redirect the railroad. And I'm like, are we gonna see the Tong before the end of the season? Because we only saw Lily. We haven't actually seen, I guess, some of their mobster men who came to attack, but we actually haven't seen their leaders. I was like, who's gonna roll up in town? Because I want to know why Kai is so scared that we are like pushing chairs over and screaming at our closest friend.
It's gotten very big all of a sudden, hasn't it? Because Wendy was very much a personal story, and now suddenly there's all these like life or death stakes, that not just in regards to Abby and Tom, but the whole town. And it feels like we're close to a season finale, and not to shade the Winchesters, but I think that's the exact opposite here. Well, it feels like it's kind of dragging its feet a little bit. I know Wendy did in this episode, but generally where the story feels at in Wendy now, it feels like we're on the cusp of a huge like explosive showdown. Who knows what that's going to look like, and then because we still have one more episode to go before the finale, so anything can happen in Independence. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm so thrilled and excited for what comes next, because genuinely we don't know.
Remember when critics reviewed the pilot and they're like, how is this going to be a full show? That's all I gotta say.
It's just, wow, proving everybody wrong. Okay, what else about Wendy before we hop to Horseshoe Bay, which is, again, another show that's amazing.
Can we just go to Nancy?
We can go to Nancy.
We're chomping at the bit here.
Yeah, so like episode 15, which if y'all who are on a Nancy journey with us didn't know, we've actually already seen this episode. We saw it out of context when we were preparing for Tom Swift, and seeing it in context, I want to take all of our temperatures. How did you feel with the in context watch?
I loved this episode so much. Like, I saw it through different eyes. I like And knowing Tom fully, it just gave me a different feeling about seeing him again. Like I just cared so much about him. And I loved the way that his dynamic with the whole Drew crew, with the team, especially with Nancy, they were like, they could have been besties if Tom like came back, which I'm gonna campaign. I want him to come back in the final season desperately. I don't care if it doesn't fit into the final season plot. Like I just want to see Tom again. And I know like the ending of Tom Swift, they're not even on the same timeline, so he could still come back because I know the ending of Tom Swift was like a lot for him to like come back and deal with all of that. But like I just want to see him again. He was so much fun on the show. But yeah, I thought the seeing his world come into Horseshoe Bay and seeing their reactions to like science where they're all like spooky and supernatural was so much fun to give them like a kind of like people are constantly looking at them like what is going on with you guys, and they were doing that with Tom with all of his gadgets and Barclay and everything, and it was a different layer of like comedy. It just mixed up the world and it was I loved it.
Yeah, it very much felt a bit like a superhero show because I feel like Nancy follows the same kind of procedural format that like The Flash would, but the one area it never really leans into is the like technological mumbo jumbo, and seeing Tom there with his like nanotechnology and all of that to solve these problems. It very much felt like that. But yeah, it was so interesting to revisit because obviously great seeing Tom again. It was wonderful to see him. But on the other hand, this episode is just like an unusual standalone quality that it was so easily approachable for us back then that you could just dive right into the story. But now watching it with the context, you're like, hold on a minute, all this stuff with Nancy and the Hudsons is going on in the background. Never really came to the forefront. So it was pretty apt that we watched the two of them, this and the next one together, because we always do this. Every time we do a double feature, it feels like that was part one and part two. And it very much felt like that. But we'll get to episode 16 shortly. But this was such an interesting example because they had that like standalone little adventure in the middle, but at the same time, there was so much storyline there that we didn't really understand the first time around, and now you can appreciate. You can see the conflict that Nancy feels over being a Hudson and a Drew, and it kind of worked really well with Tom. And it's so interesting to watch it back now to see Tom again, because even though that was his first appearance in the Drew-universe, it felt like to us like we were catching up with an old friend because it was kind of out of its own timeline. And I just wanted to say how wonderful that was because I miss Tom Swift a lot, and I don't think I really realized that until we saw just how like vibrant and energetic and how he just
So much
livened up the scene.
fun. He's
Exactly.
just fun. No one has fun anymore.
But no, I miss Tom a lot while watching this episode.
Yeah.
I hate that we don't have a season 2 for him. I did rewatch our review of this episode. Two basically said the same things she had said before, so it's like really great down to the like the difference between the technology and the supernatural and how that was clashing, and how they were all surprised by each other. And Michael, you did say that it was like a superhero
Oh, did I?
show. You did. You said it's like a mix of different genres. Personally, for me, this is my least favorite Nancy Drew episode, which is saying something because that's like what you were saying, Reed, with Wendy. Like a slower Nancy episode is like still better than anything else. Well, a lot of different things on television. For me, it's just I loved all the Tom stuff. The fans and stuff was bringing me down, but like the Tom stuff,
I liked it.
that's where we differ. But the Tom stuff, I just you could see how well he fits into this universe, and but still doing his own thing. And I liked that Nancy got another person to have a different dynamic with, and that he was someone with an outside perspective on what's going on with her. And because he comes from that world of like, you do have to wear armor, like you do have to protect who you are in these circles, and he teaches her that. And she, helps him get to a point where he's going to talk to his father. Spoiler alert for Tom Swift, y'all. His father is, I don't like that man. I don't think, but we don't like him. Seeing this in context now, knowing what happens in Tom Swift, I like him even less. But Tom is amazing because despite all of that, he's always looking for something that's going to further his legacy and his father's legacy, and to be able to reach for the stars. I mean, literally, he is on a mission to find a meteorite that's going to help his dad get to Saturn. Like, it's just Tom has such a big heart, and a fierce wit and great fashion sense. And it's just CW made a mistake by canceling Tom Swift. Like they should have just kept him and promoted that show. But just to get to the fandom real quick, I didn't like it because it felt out of place and felt like something that should have happened earlier.
I can see that, but it was like the first time that I had watched some like a storyline for them that felt really like organic and natural, and I really enjoyed watching it. Toward the end, it got kind of like, yeah, okay, I get it. I got what you were trying to do. Like you can see the lesson, but I don't know. I like seeing them vulnerable, having those conversations. Like they can really understand each other on a different level now. I just really enjoy. Anytime Nick gets really vulnerable and personal like that, I love it. I love him, and I love hearing his perspective and him stepping into his own. I don't know. He's just coming into his own, I think, in this group where he can bring his perspective forward. And seeing him with Tom, I love that too.
Yes.
And I loved. I can't gush enough about how much I love these writers and these characters, because seeing Nick not be toxic about their kiss, like if this had happened in like the 2000s, he would have been like, ugh, and like they didn't, like that's not even a thought in any of these characters' minds. And for me, that's just really heartwarming to see how that there is growth in this kind of storytelling. There is a storytelling where that doesn't have to be like a joke, like right, like Nick is being a really good friend, and I don't know, I don't even know what else to say, but I really loved that scene too. And once again, just being reminded that Nick and Ace are two of the best male characters that television may have ever seen.
Salt of the earth. No, I agree. I thought they handled some of the storylines really well. I understand where you're coming from, Sabrina, because I worry sometimes when the CW shows can try to tackle a lesson or a serious storyline, the thing that lets it down is that it comes out of nowhere. And maybe that's what that felt like, because you thought that Nick and George would have had an important conversation like that now. But I do think they handled it well enough. I maybe it's the acting, maybe it was the dialogue or the storylines, but it was interesting to rewatch it, because again, I remember watching it the first time and instantly drawn to the character of Nick because of how well that scene was acted. And it was interesting now to watch it with all those feelings that you have for Nick, because again, Nick, iconic character, brilliant, and so easy to root for. And yeah, I really enjoyed the scene. I do get where you're coming from. Sometimes scenes like that can feel like they come out of nowhere, but again, I thought it was handled well. I really enjoyed it and I really liked it, and it made me care more about Nick and George, because they're so stuck in the middle of this like supernatural storyline. They never have any time for each other or for serious conversations. So maybe that's why it felt like it came out of nowhere. And then the fact that George got that quirk in at the end when Nick asked her if it was okay that he kissed Tom, she was like, I'm literally sharing my body with a supernatural entity. Like, I wonder what we thought of that the first time watching that out of context, but now we got it and now we know that.
I feel like probably confusion, like, excuse me, you're what? But like, I think, so for me, the writing around it for what it was fine. It's more so there are two characters that are supposedly living together, and she's never seen him code switch, which I was like, you've never, like, at all, never, because he mentions his friends, and of course he's in touch with his family, and there are Black people in Horseshoe Bay, not as many, but he knows some. He's been interacting with them, so I was like, he's never seen it, okay, and I was like, she doesn't code switch either. I feel like she would, but then I was like, is this a discussion? Am I looking too deeply? Is this like a discussion between someone who did not grow up in a predominantly white area, who's a person of color, and someone who did grow up in a predominantly white area, who's a person of color? And those are two different living experiences. She would not experience, not just because they're two different races, but she just would not experience the same things that he would. It's not, him coming to Hershey Bay is a culture shock. She's lived her entire life. It would not be for her. So I was like, what did I want from them? And I think what I wanted from them was to be a more nuanced in it.
Yeah, I agree with you, because when they started the storytelling, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. But then where it ended up kind of with them, it wasn't exactly the payoff I was hoping from where the story started. It was kind of more about them being like, oh, we need to be honest with each other. And I was like, Yeah, but I also wanted a little bit more of the conversation they were having.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it ended up being about like, oh, I'm gonna post you on social media, or like, oh, I'm gonna be more honest with you. I was like, okay, but I feel like we can continue the conversation we were having a little bit more. It lost a little bit as it kept going on.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of where the episodic problem comes in, because like I said, the stories like that can sometimes pop up out of nowhere, be dealt with in the episode, and then never dealt with again. And then that kind of undercuts the importance of it, because maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see them having conversations like that again unless something else like a plot forces them to. And maybe it would have been a little bit more poignant or meaningful if you got to see them have it all along and get to see them have it after this. But yeah, like Reed said, it was wrapped up in the end of the episode just because Nick got hurt, and then that gave them that like nice moment together where they had that quick conversation, and that was that. Like when you think about it, that storyline was handled in maybe what 2, 3 scenes, and maybe it needed a little bit more room than that to breathe.
Yeah, but then also putting it into context of time, which I keep trying to remember that about Nancy Drew. They've been together for 2 months, potentially.
Maybe the
So
show's time is very confusing to me.
it's all over the place. But yeah, so I think that's the only thing that really brought it down for me. I just wanted it to be more nuanced. Other than that, it's a really great, solid episode of Nancy Drew that establishes Tom in a way that makes him feel like he's already a part of this universe when he clearly has just walked through the door. I also thought that I love that they did a lower stakes mission in order to introduce him. Like it's a mission for him, but it also just seeds information for what's going to happen next in Nancy Drew. But that overpowering situation, we learn a little bit more about the women in white, and that the Bickerins are actually now the road back, and it lets us set up what's going to happen as we move forward. And also there was time for Beanie Watch.
Beanie Watch. The whole episode, I was like, what does this mean? This is a whole new whole new layer of Beanie Watch. What does it mean? Why does she have it on? It's the black one. What does it mean? I couldn't figure it out. I have no real theories. I was trying to put it together. Okay, like does she feel insecure because she's with Tom and he's kind of a big personality and he's just as smart as she is? Does she feel insecure? Is that I don't know. Did she just have it on because it was cold at night? I was trying, and I don't know.
What was interesting to me was when they said he has an outfit for every occasion, Nancy kind of responded by taking the beanie out and like desperately putting it on, and it's like, is that her outfit? Is that her like superhero costume? Is that when she feels most comfortable doing her thing? And I was like, are they kind of, her and Tom are kind of similar, just in different fields, because he had his outfit for this scenario. Was that her outfit for this scenario? And like Reed said, why was it the black one and not the white one?
Well, it's not
The white one came off.
It did, but that's not her mom's beanie.
It's true.
It is. I mean, he makes that comment about it being from a thrift store. I think it actually is. It's like, Nancy, are we so lost in our identity? We chose neither of the beanies. We're neither Drew or Hudson. We went store brand.
We're in the confusion beanie era. Look, I want to know the meaning of the beanie. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but I feel like it has something to do with her emotional state. Like, was she feeling insecure? Is it her security blanket? I don't know.
Her armor. The beanie has been her armor, and then Tom gives her the Balmain dress, and that's going to be her. I'm a rich person now, and
God, that dress.
It's amazing. Wait, should we flow into episode
Let's get
16?
into 16 because I'm ready.
Yes, I mean, first of all, I really like that they gave us we got to see the dress because they put that coat on and it was done. They gave us the moment. But as far as the episode goes, my goodness, the fact that it was an episode in which Nancy's racing against her own team to find answers, so well done, chef's kiss.
I love angry Nancy. I love her. This is probably way too deep in the episode, but I loved her popping off on them, doing her Tyra, I was rooting for you, just screaming at them, which was so earned, and I loved it. But yeah, their first mistake was not telling her anything. Like, you have to learn by now, you don't keep information from Nancy Drew. You just don't do that. That's something you don't do, because she's, like she was saying, she's trying to keep everybody alive, and she needs to know all the information. You're not going to outsmart Nancy Drew. You're just not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that when they were all at the gate and they wouldn't share the information with her, and she obviously wouldn't share her information with them, that Nancy went, they thought they were being better by having Amanda and get the information with us, whereas Nancy just got the information from the man at the gate and then strutted off all like proud of herself, and they were kind of in awe of her. But I mean, that kind of just showcased the whole episode, because wasn't it Ryan actually said he thinks they're about a half a step ahead of Nancy, but she was 2 or 3 steps ahead of them the whole time. Like
Nancy is so far ahead of them. She's in a different area code.
Yeah.
Like you just got to know that about Nancy.
Nick should have known. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He was just like, we
he's like such a dad that he's always like, oh, I'm doing this to protect her, and it's like, no. If you want to protect her, you keep her in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Because by you protecting her, she's going to protect. It's a whole circle of protection that, like, if you keep her out of it, it's not good news for anyone.
It's not, and it's still, and even when she had to make allowances for the places in which they had gotten there first, she was still ahead, because even when the reporter comes, she's already done taking the picture of the journal. She just tossed it back into the car and locked
With that
it.
reveal after, that was so smooth. She was like, now none of us can have it. And I was like, yes. And then when they revealed that she had taken pictures, I was like, that's my girl. I never doubt her.
Ever. And yet there was just a lot of doubting in this episode. And I just don't understand why. I get that part of it was because they don't know where she lands with the Hudson thing, but it's Everett. It was not going to be a situation in which she was going to ever sell them out in a way that would put them in danger. So I just don't, I mean, it made for great TV though, for them to really think that they were ahead of Nancy Drew. Like, no, sirs, no, ma'am. Like,
seeing her in that car with her dress on and that with the jacket and just being pissed, yes. I loved it. It was so beautiful.
And it really set. The episode did such a good job. I know the show has done such a good job of setting Everett up as this force to be reckoned with, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with like supernatural zombies, whatever. And yet this businessman who is in prison for most of the show's run is the big bad. The season's done such a good job of setting that up. And oh my goodness, the dream sequence at the start, intense, violent, shocking. And then to pivot right to the end, even after we learned all about what Everett done, the fact that the real force to be reckoned here with is Nancy Drew. Incredible like shift of balance right in the last couple of minutes of the episode. Oh, what a sequence.
Did you see Ghost Grandma coming? Because I didn't.
No, I
No.
didn't.
For a minute, I was like, is she... I knew something was up when she let her into the whatever that dark chamber meat locker was. I don't know where they were. But she kept saying like, I'm not gonna fall into any traps, and I was like, Nancy, you're walking into one willingly. But that whole scene was Celia was being so bizarre that I was like, are you like... I was waiting for her to like peel her face off, and it was going to be like Everett or something. I didn't know what was happening. I did not foresee her being a ghost.
I know.
That was a lot.
I was like, not Grandma Celia, because I thought like her one ally on the Hudson side that wasn't Ryan, like the grandmother who really wanted to get to know her, and I was like, can she not have any older women in her life who support her? Like, can she just not have that? But it was, I know every pod episode we praise Kennedy, but again, a tour de force episode for her from the opening to the middle to the end, and that sequence with her and Celia, where she realizes how far ahead of her Everett was, and that she was not able to protect everyone that she cares about, and the way that she just loses it is just so amazing. And of course, then it's like, Everett, you've done messed up. Because the one thing you will not do is get ahead of Nancy Drew, and that's why you got tased. We're on our way to something else.
That was so juicy.
She was pissed, and to the level of which it's entered calmness. Like that's when you know we're at scary levels of mad, because if she's calm while she's mad,
this is like smirk. Dark Nancy in a way that Dark Betty on Riverdale, like. That was child's play. This is like a different. This is like where like eyes are glazed over, seeing red. Nancy's like, no.
She put a bag over that man's head and told Gilda to let's go. I was like, oh.
You don't know how desperately I wanted to watch episode 17. I was like, where are we going? What's happening? Did she kill him? Is she alive? It's so good. But to circle back to praising Kennedy, there were also so many moments of like lightness to Nancy too. Like when she has that lunch with Celia, and Celia's like, tell is it the florist? And she was like, I'm definitely not going to do that. There were just so many like little like Nancy-isms thrown in to lighten her up and to show that she's still a little bit playful. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and she does it too with George when she calls to get what the name of the Black Crown tape is because she doesn't know it yet. And not George, sorry, Bess. And she's on the phone with her, and Bess realizes at the end that she just got played. Yes, Nancy's so good.
Oh, it was such a good Nancy episode because we always said that she's kind of like at the center of every storyline. At the end of the day, she is the title character, but like it's been a while since it felt like we had like a really like intense Nancy driven episode because the timing was perfect because we said at the end of last episode how she kind of felt like she lost herself, so it made sense that this was or not the last week's episode that we watched, so it made sense. And like of course she played a kind of a supporting role to Tom in the previous episode, but what a comeback it was as far as like a Nancy driven episode goes. And you knew from Kennedy's performance when Nancy woke up from the nightmare in the beginning scene that it was going to be a tense one, and it followed through it at hook, line and sinker.
From a critical standpoint, like the way they've been seeding the storyline through the past episodes, even the ones that have been standalone, they're really like now it's on an upward trajectory, which some other shows have not been doing.
No,
we're not going to name names, but if you peer through that shade, you might know what I was talking about. But like it just feels like the gas is turned on, like we're pedal to the metal for the last 2 episodes of the season, like no turning back now.
And we're still seeding the picture that her dad took when he turns over the Polaroid, and she's got claw marks on her arm, and it's just like we are like speeding towards this finale, and there's still so much to uncover, and it makes you very excited for what's to happen next. And I too was struggling not to push play on episode 17.
And there's so many like little things too. Like I was even loving the new dynamic between Nancy and Ryan. I think that was episode 15 though. When they were, maybe it was 16, I don't know, it was when she was on the phone and he was like, are we talking about my love life right now? Like just like the way that they're finding their footing as like father and daughter is I love it. They're just, and also like subtle Ace things too, like with his car, and like a lot of times he's just kind of there, but he does so much just being there. Like when he goes to visit Amanda's dad in jail, like I thought that like he was just sitting there for a while, and then like he made his presence known. And I can never gush enough about the little things in this show.
Yeah, and the yes moment, not to go back to the previous episode, but like when he went up to Tom and asked him about his car, and it was like, mine's named Florence. It came to me in a dream, and there's just like awkward silence. Like
so weird.
Like this was my first impression of Ace back when we watched that episode, and I wish I remembered what I thought, but what a genius moment. It's just so subtle.
It is, and to have that context now of who he is, and he's just like, he's so brilliant and so awkward and weird and adorable, and he's just a fully rounded character. Even in that episode where it's not really an Ace episode, he keeps popping up to be there for Nancy, and now I understand that more because I was like, why is Ace always lurking while something is happening with Nancy? It's like, oh, because he's like her partner in crime. I get it now. You out of context for episode 15, that's not something that you would understand in context. It's definitely because he knows she's struggling right now, and he wants to be there. I was kind of
mad at him when he spilled George's secret.
Oh yeah, that was very easy though.
Ace. But then George like didn't care when Bess brought it up. I also didn't love the base. I mean, creating a new ship. Best storyline of just like the dating profile. I was kind of like I for comedy and like to keep it light, it was fine, but compared to like feral Bess in 215 and then she's just like dealing with her dating profile, I was like, okay, whatever. But she's always funny and a delight no matter what they give her.
Yeah, without a doubt. But the moment at the end between her and George was really nice because George doesn't really do lovey-dovey kind of anything, so that was a really nice moment between the two. But I also then struggled with the fact that did Odette help her write the dating profile or whatever?
Yeah,
And you're like,
that was
we're using Odette off screen an awful lot for things that Odette wouldn't do. I know Odette is definitely growing as a character, but like there's no denying the like affection she has for Bess. I know maybe Odette doesn't know what a dating profile is, but you know what I mean. Like, I feel like that story would have played out differently if they wanted it to play out on screen, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm asking too much, but you get the point.
Well, because if it was on screen, it would have been, I guess, Odette picking at George's struggle to write positively in a way that was flowery. Perhaps it would have been better if she had said that Nick had helped her. Where they could, it did seem like something that like Nick and her could put together. Not that Odette, I guess, wouldn't help George. It just doesn't feel like Odette's sad about what happened with her lady love. So why would she want her the lady love that she was trying to move on with or try something with to move on to? She's sad, and everybody's moving on. So Odette probably would not have helped.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was fine, but I mean, like, I hope we didn't know how to feel about that romance, and that was a good thing because it made us feel something, even though we didn't know what it was. I hope they don't just like drop it now since we're heading towards the finale. There has to be some kind of resolution with that, I feel. Am I wrong in wanting that?
No, like a goodbye of some kind when they finally decide to, unless we're with Odette until season 3. Who knows?
Who knows?
Because, I mean, they have a lot on their plates for 17 and 18. So it might have to wait until season 3. I'm not sure, but everything else in the A plot was just delicious. I'm very excited.
Chef's kiss.
Yes. I don't know how we're wrapping this up though, but we are now on the dark side and it's going to be so much fun.
Can't wait.
Bring him down. Bring him down.
Yes. Because she did say justice. She didn't say jail. What does that mean?
I don't know. She cooked him.
She did. That
Pop,
man
pop,
has a
pop.
Okay, before we wrap up the pod, though, we do have an announcement to make. We got Superman and Lois season 3 and Gotham Knights screeners, so we will be doing spoiler-free reviews in our next pod. We're very excited to be returning to the Kent farm and to be introduced to the CW's Gotham once again, to see how it differs from the Gotham that they'd created in Batwoman.
I can't wait. I said this before, superheroes on the CW is my thing. It feels like it's been rough out here. I am taking these episodes. I am going to enjoy the heck out of these episodes and embracing this era while we've still got it.
I know. Wow. DC on the CW could be coming to an end. But it's an era. So we will have those spoiler-free reviews up the Monday after next. So it'll be in March. Yay. But that is it for this week's pod. We are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Watch Nancy.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.